5 minutes.
I know. We're doing well. Hi, everyone.
Technology.
Welcome to eLearnChat. If you're wondering, we're a little bit late today. We started earlier, but unfortunately we had to abort the show because Skype has not been behaving very well. But I think we're all on right now. We've got Dr. Karl Kapp with us. We've got the venerable Leslie Price. We are all here. And you didn't know you were venerable, did you, Leslie?
No, I didn't.
No.
I didn't. And you said, to me, when you emailed me, you must know Karl. But Karl, we haven't met before. So, hello, and how are you?
Very well, and a pleasure to meet you.
And since we've had so many issues with Skype, we're not going to run any intros. We're just going to start the show, and we're on right now. So, I was talking to Karl in our first failed show for about a minute into it. And recently you were the keynote speaker at the Lectora User Conference. And that was a unique event that you did, and it went really well. Everybody was very pleased with the results of that. You want to tell us a little bit about what you did that was kind of different?
Yeah, so what I decided to do for my keynote, since there was a lot of designers of instruction and people creating instruction, I decided to make it an interactive keynote. A lot of keynotes are just one person kind of monologuing, and I really wanted to have it interactive. So we used I used Poll Everywhere, and I created this story about this professor, and she was missing, and the audience had to try to help find the professor. And so on the map, we had different locations that the audience could choose where they wanted to go. So it was a very non-linear keynote presentation. I didn't know where it was going to go or how subjects would relate to each other or kind of interlink, and I just said, okay, here's the map, here's the clues, where do you want to go? And so the audience would vote on a place, and we'd go there, and we'd have some questions and interactivity, and then we'd come back, and we'd go to another place and come back. And so it was really kind of an interesting experiment for me to see how that interactive keynote would go, and also how the audience would react to a non-linear format.
That's actually really interesting, because last year when I was judging the Learning Technology Awards, one of the awards that won was the historic palaces in the UK, in London. And they'd done an interactive, almost like you would call it gamification experience for youngsters going round historic royal palaces, rediscovering or discovering for the first time what it would be like. And they had iPads up against things, and the images on the walls were talking to them, and the youngsters were actually then taken on this journey through royal palaces. And I just thought, what a fantastic way to introduce young people to history. And it sounds, and it was like a treasure trail around royal palaces.
Yes. Oh, that sounds really fascinating. So I guess that was a mixture
I'll send you the link, because it was fascinating.
So were they using like some virtual reality then, with holding up the iPod?
Yes, they were. They were. And the whole idea was to get young people engaged not just in technology, which they are engaged in, but also use that to get them to experience history as well, and to make history come alive through a game.
Fantastic, yeah. No, I think that's a great, museums and architecture are such rich areas for interactivity. It's really kind of neat to see that kind of application.
And the end result of your...
And I'm afraid
and also
I might have just gotten dumped, because I cannot hear anybody anymore.
You can't hear us? Uh-oh. That may be a bad sign.
I can still hear.
You hear us. This is like the third time he may get knocked off, but we'll bring him right. Can you hear us? No, there he goes. Let me get him back on quick. Okay, this time we got you back quickly.
Yeah, that worked well.
Okay,
Better.
good.
I don't know.
I think Skype also auto calls when you get knocked out, and then it starts going bonkers. It auto calls everyone and everything, so it's fun.
Okay.
And we were just talking about how in your interactive, if you will, very, very audience engaged keynote, I remember I was outside in a booth, but people were coming out going, that was really cool, that was different. They were all discussing it, meaning you got everyone's attention, which is, part of the whole game. You get an A for that, because
right,
if you can get attention, boy, that's almost all of it. But they thought it was fascinating how it worked, and I'd say of the people I talked with, maybe 20 that I talked with about it, they thought it was really interesting, different. They all said different, and they liked the way it interacted with everybody, and how you could still kind of retain control of the session without really retaining control. It was an interesting.
Yeah, it was neat. I kind of set it up as a journey and a story. So we had the story elements. They were following characters along, and we had the other thing that I did was we had interactivity that was both traditional, I guess, raise your hand or shout out what clue, and then we used the audience response system to see kind of what the audience felt about certain things or believed about certain things. So we were able to kind of mix both traditional interactivity with hand raising and shouting out, as well as the digital interactivity, and the umbrella of the story or the journey kind of held it all together. So it was really kind of an interesting. The one surprise to me was how quickly we made it through all the content. My original thought was to make it big enough so that I could do this presentation over and over again and never have to prep again. Because it would all be there, but it would never be the same presentation. It would always be different.
Yeah.
But we did make it through the content a little bit more quickly, so I had to add some more things to it for my next iteration.
Now, could that have been the audience too, where you got through it quickly because the audience was just really moving with you?
I think so, yeah. I mean, there was actually a little bit of like flow. So, I was kind of into the flow of the presentation. The audience was very much into, where do we go next, and what is the mystery, and, how do we find out what's happening. And so I think there's combinations of, the element of curiosity, the element of control that the audience had, but also the element of uncertainty, how is this going to work out, and what does a presentation like this look like, and all those things I think combined. And then it's a developer audience, so I asked them to look at the presentation both from a learner, you're learning about the presentation, but also as a developer, and consider how you could do this in your own course development. What could you basically steal from me to use in your own creation of online learning courses or of presentations or whatever their mode of conveying knowledge happened to be.
It's actually quite interesting you're saying that on today. Do you realize that today is the 50th anniversary of the release of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band?
No, I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's the 50th anniversary, and I was listening to a program today which was talking about all the new technology that the Beatles used during the production of that particular LP, as I would have called it then, album or whatever they call it now. But they were using very different technology, and what one of the guys was saying was the technology and the way that they were doing things then in a studio had never ever been done before. And so what you're saying about what you were doing with your presentation is, I think, has some affinity to that, because you were doing things differently. And what they then said was that all the bands then, instead of doing things live, went into studio, prepared them beforehand, got them ready, did everything right, and then put them all together, and other people then pinched and used their ideas, and it changed the way that music was written. So you might be the one.
I hope so, yeah. Well, it kind of grew out of frustration because, I try to mimic what I do in my presentations, and you go to so many presentations, Rick and I were talking about this, and you go to a presentation on storytelling and nobody tells a story. Or you go on gamification and it's not about gamification. So I wanted to model that. I think I got kicked off again.
No, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
I'm mad at Skype.
Uh-oh, Skype's not behaving. That's okay.
I can hear.
We hear him, but he doesn't hear us. He'll go away in a second, probably. We can count it down. 3, 2, 1. This is interactive. Yep, there he goes. Hold on.
Gotta love technology, Rick.
But we're getting really good at this. Now we get him back quickly. Hi there. That was just a brief 5-second interlude.
No, but I just think it's quite interesting when you think that 50 years ago today, you've actually got one of the best-known bands in the world reinventing the way that music was being recorded, and what you're saying from what you were doing, you're trying to do things in a very different way and hope that people will take it up and carry it on, particularly with storytelling.
Yes, and the thing I was talking to Rick when I was at the conference was, I've been to lots of presentations where people talk about storytelling, but they're not telling a story. Or people talking about gamification and they're not doing gamification. So I really wanted to make sure that the presentation, the content, the delivery method reflected the content. That was really my goal.
Well, we live in an industry that's very heavily meta-tagged. It's all about meta-speak, not so much doing or actually making it happen. It's more about talking about it, and then they never do it. And so as a result, the few that do it are looked at like, what they did. They actually did this? You can actually do that? Yeah. And it's a shame because talk is cheap. Like everybody says, anybody can meta talk, and meta talk's pretty much empty talk. It doesn't say anything. You and I were talking, Karl, about gamification, and to me, it's like I hate that word because everybody interprets it the wrong way. They think we're creating games. No, we could be, but we're really doing elements of game design. And let me plug you on this one. Karl has some wonderful courses on lynda.com. I've been through all of them at this point. They're excellent. I call Karl the minimizer. He minimizes the BS and gets to the point of what the actual subject is and makes it very clear. And that makes you a good communicator. I mean, a wonderful communicator, because there's so much BS out there. And you get to the point and you make it easy for most. I've recommended your course to, I don't know, probably 500 people already. And not to mention how many people we've had in these audiences. So probably several thousand or 5,000. So, yeah, it's just one of those things that it's hard to find people that like to communicate and try to actually be understood and cut through the haze of what's out there versus let's create more haze. No, let's make it a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. And so that somebody can pick it up and do it. I mean, that's my main thing. I want to be able to explain it in the methodology that somebody can say, oh yeah, I can do that, and just grab it and then go and do it. And that's exciting to see people who, take that teaching or that communication and actually run with it. It's really gratifying.
Yeah, and for example, Leslie and I are probably considered the grumps of e-learning because we kind of poo-poo a lot of stuff. We're like, nah.
Oh, gee, thanks, Rick.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'm the grump. Okay, what is it, like Beauty and the Beast? I don't know. I'm not the Beauty.
From Winnie the Pooh, right? Is that
but seriously, it's we've been through a lot. We've been through it all, and you kind of look at it and go, oh, come on, guys. Every time I hear somebody tell me e-learning is brand new, like 4 decades ago, maybe.
Yeah. Right.
It's like
I've only been doing this since 1998.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
But I also think I think storytelling is incredibly important when we are. I do apologize, people, for the lighting and the background in the room. I'm having my house refurbished, and I'm living in total chaos. So behind me, you're seeing empty wardrobes. So I do apologize. But I think storytelling is incredibly important. From when children are very, very little, we give them a framework for how they're going to be, how they should behave, what they're going to achieve, all kinds of things through storytelling. And yet somehow that seems to stop it did stop when people got older, and then it all had to become all de facto, and this is what you should do. And I think storytelling is immensely important in e-learning. Immensely important.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. I mean, I think the distilling things down to bulleted list. I always say that we took the worst from classroom instruction and we automated it online, right? So at least in a classroom, you had a human to look at to express some emotion, to add some inflection, and then we just put it online, and I think we did a horrible disservice. So I agree 100%. Storytelling's the way to go.
And if you think about it, just from a cultural perspective, every culture on our planet for the last multi-thousand years has told stories from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next. And the culture was continued. The experiences of the elders continued. The experiences to the children.
We've lost him again, Rick.
We've lost him again. Oh, hold on. I think we're getting down to less than 5 seconds on these now. We're getting good.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I did send some negative feedback to Skype.
Did you?
Yeah. I was just called. I'm like, it was horrible.
Oh, God. Did you guys have weather out there today by any chance?
No, it's like a nice day.
They have. Sorry, Rick. There is weather every day of the year.
True. True. But sometimes in our special locations, we get a little extra weather, and we've been really nice out here, so I was thinking maybe there was weather. Well, you know what? There's weather all around the country, and we don't know what this is relaying through on all the servers and repeaters and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, but we know we have you for about 5 minutes at a time, so we just these are little breaks. This is good actual learning.
Anyway, you were going back to storytelling, Carl, because I'm actually really interested in that.
How important it is, and how, as you had said, people have kind of lost storytelling, but I think it's a natural way to convey knowledge, and it's it gets back to Bandura, right? It's social learning before we had iPhones and all that kind of stuff. It's actually modeling the behavior, and there's really cool research that says when you read a story, for example, the same areas in your brain light up as in the story. So if you read about running, the area of your brain that lights up when you run lights up under MRI. If you read about problem solving, the area of your brain that's involved with problem solving lights up under an MRI. So stories are almost like a practice for what you want to do. So why not use them in learning? Because they tell you what you need to do and create a rich database from which you can draw on stories and experiences. Rarely does anybody draw on a bullet point list to handle disciplining a child, that kind of stuff. You think, well, what did my mother do? What did my dad? What did my you think of stories. Oh, I was in this situation. Here's what happened. So they're very powerful. I absolutely agree.
Well, it's also interesting when you bring back the cognitive part and the cortex, how it retains memories, but it's also spread out through the brain. The cortex is a big little what should I call it? Organ, if you will. It's not an organ, but a part of the brain. And it is interesting how those things do light up on MRIs, and how it shows. Some quantum physicists like to say that our brains are quantum machines, because the brain can literally go across time. Mentally, we can go from past, present to future in a heartbeat. And they're saying as we do that, those parts of the brain do light up. And in essence, you could be reliving something, and it's so real that you can't tell that from a dream. And same with learning. We learn things; they get stored in the brain. If we have retention, if it's something that we found really interesting, it's very alive in our brains, and we can get to it. And the other thing is, when you were talking about that, the more connections we have in the brain is really what determines how young we are. It's not so much our age.
I think that also applies with. I know gamification is not a word that I particularly like to use, but I was with my young great nephew today, and he's in hospital. He's not very well, but he absolutely thoroughly enjoyed playing games with shaking maracas or banging on a drum. And again, if you then bring in that from when we are very little, we learn through playing games, and we learn through storytelling. So it's therefore, to me, interesting that now people like yourself, Karl, are now bringing this into learning as adults, not just as children.
Well, you know, another thing, Leslie, that you bring that up, they've done a lot of research, especially with Alzheimer's, and music therapy is one of the most effective ways to combat Alzheimer's. It uses so much of the brain. When you were saying that about your nephew, it's the same idea that the maracas and the drums and everything, that's affecting a lot of different parts of the brain, and that causes endorphins to happen, and you feel good. It's fun.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, the more elements of the brain that you can get working, and especially, you know, and I was talking to somebody the other day about, I had put pedagogy on you know, a slide, and they said, well, I see that you're thinking about, you know, childlike learning instead of like andragogy. And I said, I said, I really think that if we look at the most kids are learning machines. We don't have to do anything. You just point them in a direction and they learn. And then we kind of beat it out of them in this systematic, step-by-step process. And I really think we need to get back to how...
We'll go back. Hold on.
Another one.
Okay.
I think 4 seconds. That's good.
Right, yeah.
I know, I totally and utterly agree, Karl. Totally and utterly agree with you.
Yeah, we just, I mean, I really think we need to get back, and especially all these companies are looking for creativity, and then they have these policies and procedures of what you're not allowed to do, what you're not allowed to think, what you're not allowed to, you know, all those kind of things within the company. And really, we need to give people space and free time to play and to come up with creative ideas, problem solving, new products, new ways of doing things, and play is just such a great organic way to help people learn.
Well, maybe, do you think it's maybe we're using the wrong word? So gamification and play sounds like too much like fun and not like work.
Yeah.
So maybe if we'd actually come up with a different name other than gamification, it might actually have more success or more traction.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
No, I agree. I've struggled with the word gamification. I probably don't like it. I probably don't dislike it as much as you two do, but because I've done pretty well with the word gamification. But it does have it doesn't have the meaning that it should have, and it has a lot of connotation that is negative. And a lot of people look like gamefulness was a word, but to your point, it still kind of uses the same. Game carries a lot of baggage with it. Gaming the system, don't play games with me, games are for kids. So yeah, there's a lot. I don't know, we need a better word. Somebody once said, the Eskimos have all these words for snow, yet we only have like one word for learning and one word for play and one for there's different kinds of play and different kinds of learning. So yeah, I think it'd be here in America, Trump just made a new word, kafifi. So maybe we could use that word.
Kafifi. What was kafifi?
It was COVEFEF. He wrote it in a tweet, and some people think he was talking about something else, and then just fell asleep. And some people think it's a secret word, but nobody knows what it
Interesting.
means. So I guess it's a word that's up for grabs. Was what I'm
That sounds like the kind of words I type when I'm not paying attention. My hand slips over the wrong key, and I'm typing 4 words, and I went, "My God, what did I just say?"
I think I've typed that word on the airplane, when I'm like getting turbulence or something.
That's right.
I know it sounds very basic, but maybe part of it is just simply to do with the word, that it's seen as being something that is not about learning. It's seen as being something that is, has no value.
Yeah. No, I think words.
No, I'm
carry
only
a lot of
throwing
weight.
that out there. I'm only throwing that out there. Rick will tell you that's just the kind of person I am.
Well, I think what it is with
Don't necessarily have all the answers.
Well, no, and what happens with
None
games?
of us
Look how they're trying to reach millennials because they like to play games a lot. So they figure if we use the word gamification, I think that's kind of where it started coming out of. What is it? It's not even been 5 or 8 years since it's been really out.
Yeah, not that long.
And that kind of coincides with the younger millennials coming into workforce, and they like to play games to the point of they play way too many games, to the point of they don't do much but play games, some of them. Not all, of course, but there's a certain group that they will literally die from 3 days of gaming, and they've had some of that actually in the news not long ago. They forget to eat. They have heart attacks. Their blood is constricted.
But they don't necessarily associate games with learning or work.
No.
Right.
And there's a lot of mixed information on, gamers really have better brains. I don't quite agree with that. I've met my share of gamers. I live in California. It's believe me, it doesn't make your brain better. There's a lot of slow connections. They're fast at the hand-eye coordination, but connecting beyond a game, no. They're good at games, but they're not necessarily good at anything else. And we've hired our share of college grads, and you just go, wow, that's sort of scary. Because they're not being taught to learn, they're being taught to repeat. And at a college level, that's really where you should start being a little more critical and really learning and using those facilities or faculties that we have. But instead, we just lost them.
Lost them. I'm sorry my light's not very good, Rick, but I'm afraid at the moment, that's all we've got.
Oh, you're fine. Sorry, I fumbled the mouse on that one.
Okay, that's all right. Yeah, and I think the other thing you were talking about, gamers, only learning a very myopic skill set. The problem is there's no effort to teach them how to transfer those skills or think about those skills more generally.
Yeah.
And there's no reflection. They just play the game. They don't reflect. And sometimes helping them, hey, well, did you do this in a game? Well, yeah. Okay. Well, that's kind of like what we're doing over here, right? Yeah. Okay. But if you don't make that bridge, they sometimes can't cross it.
Well, there's also a myth that we are multitasking individuals. Our brains actually don't multitask. They've done enough tests that what we do is we single task very, very quickly. And we can switch between tasks, but we're not doing two at the same time usually. At least not.
Much like our current.
Unless you're a woman.
Well, we men cannot compete with women, Leslie. We don't even come close. I will bow down in respect to your abilities. Totally. I say that sincerely. So it's true though. But on the whole, we don't really multitask very much. Even if you go to let's say a short order cook in a fast restaurant, if you watch them move, they're doing one thing fast all the time. They're not like doing this, and sometimes they are, but the actions are easy to do physically. Mentally, they tend to be switching back and forth, and that's the fascinating part. We can do physically quite a few things at once, as long as we have enough limbs. But mentally, it's an immediate fast transfer rate. We can go really quickly, so it looks like we're doing 5 things at once, but in reality, we're doing one, and that's the same with gaming. They're not doing 10 things at once. They're doing one thing very quickly and switching to a different one. And you're right. If you could apply that skill set to other things in life, it's amazing what they could accomplish.
Right, and help them see that their skill set is transferable. I think they have a very narrow view of what we have a narrow view, but they also have a narrow view of what their skill set might be, and help them kind of expand on that.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you know what, guys? We are literally at the end of our time. I don't want to keep you guys too long. It's already 4 o'clock. Our time's 7 o'clock. Your time, or 3 o'clock, I'm sorry.
And 11 o'clock UK time.
And 11, you're really late, and you've had a rough day to boot.
11 p.m.
Yeah.
But Carl, we'd love to have you back on. You're always welcome.
Great.
You know that.
Thanks. Yeah, this has been great. Even with the Skype
Oh, Skype's been mean to you today.
It's not my friend.
It's not your friend today. I don't know what's going on.
I'll send you the link on the historic palaces, because
I'd like to see it too,
that
Leslie.
project really was incredibly interesting.
Yeah, I'd like to see it too if you could. It sounds fun.
Yeah, no problem.
And
Maybe we could share it with people who've joined in or want to see it today.
Sure, that sounds really fun. We can put that in the show links, actually. So if you want to send it, I'll put it in the show links.
It won't be tonight. I'll send it tomorrow. Tonight I've just had a busy day.
Yeah, you need some rest.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, thank you, Karl, for coming on,
right,
and
thanks.
Leslie, as always, we appreciate
Yeah.
you, especially under a little bit of emotional duress. You're great. And for all you guys watching, we're sorry we had the Skype issues today. They happen, but hopefully you got good content because it was interesting, and we look forward to having Karl back on again. So we'll see you folks all next week. Have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks again, Karl.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Nice
Thanks,
to see
Leslie.
you all.